Welcome to a webinar where today we'll take a closer look at the productivity and critical insight that is gained from documenting your systems and understanding your IBM-i applications. This webinar has been developed by Proximity, your premier partner for IBM-i solutions, support and development. And as our name suggests, we achieve this through working closely with our customers. We're always in your corner. Before we start, it would be nice to know who's today's team is. Now, I'm going to stop sharing my screen here so you can perhaps have a better mugshot of us before we disappear. So my name is Andrew Nicholson. I enjoyed 25 years in enterprise solutions, including 10 plus years with the IBM-i community. You can probably tell by my hairline. In here, I advise and support customers to continue and grow their businesses and applications and help them become more modern, productive and profitable. Stephen, on my right, give us a wave, Stephen, started with RPG programming in the early 80s, and today is a strategist and IBM-i application development expert at Fresche. He helps clients transform their IBM-i systems with innovative, put my teeth in, strategies and modern solutions. Welcome to the webinar, Stephen. Let me share my screen again. Maybe this screen's better than the live session, but there we go. So you'll notice that on the left-hand side of your screen is the toolbar. Here you can raise your hands and ask questions. Now we're going to keep a tab on these as we have a Q&A session before the end of the webinar. Now, obviously, I'm broadcasting from home, so if you hear my dog barking in the background or the occasional shrill voice, don't worry, this is all perfectly normal. With this in mind, do pull up a chair, grab a hot cup of tea as we are about to begin. So first, I'd like to provide a quick overview on why documenting your systems will give you the confidence and power to maintain and further develop your IBM-i applications. Now, speaking as a provider of application managed services, of all the customers we talk to, one of the most pressing concerns that they have is that they don't have documentation for their systems. Many of these systems were created years ago, and even if there was some documentation, the question is it up to date? Is it current? And where there is documentation, from one developer to another, the style and quality of documentation they produce can vary to such a degree that the documentation itself may need documenting. And in many of these cases, even with documentation, the way developers have developed, time immemorial, means that their innate wisdom on how things hang together, where certain files are, elements and objects reside, will eventually retire with them. And this application wisdom is lost. And with this comes internal development challenges. With a growing lack of understanding of applications and a growing backlog of issues such as application maintenance, upgrades, or even new developments, the problem is, how do you understand your applications quickly? This is especially true for bringing in new developers into the company. How do you help them understand quickly and make changes on the system with the confidence of a developer who's been on the system for 10 years or more? Because it's one thing knowing the facts, but then there's the connection of this information, the understanding of these relationships, of how things interact and hold together. Or as Albert Einstein quite eloquently put it, any fool can know, the point is to understand. Because while knowing may provide you with the information, understanding will connect this information and make it more useful and meaningful to the developer. And that's why we're here today, to introduce you to X-Analysis, an application discovery, documentation, and understanding tool. It's built to extract information from your system and then present it to you in a way that facilitates an understanding of how your system is built, what it does and how things interact, plus provide the appropriate documentation accordingly. So this all sounds good, right? But what does it actually do, and how do we reach this level of understanding? Well, X-Analysis automates the documentation for your IBM-i applications, providing insightful analysis and a graphical representation of your IBM-i applications, not just helping you know what's where, but fundamentally supporting your understanding of your IBM-i enterprise. All well and good, but let's get to the nitty-gritty on how can X-Analysis actually help. First, do you fully understand the ramifications of object change? Well, X-Analysis can help track all iterations and association variables, plus highlight every object affected by change. Or do you have a working model of your enterprise to support business continuity, application maintenance, and development? Well, X-Analysis will provide a relation data model of all your IBM-i application databases and automatically extract from DDS objects and source. Plus, it analyzes complexities, identifies possible problems, and even creates metrics based upon effort estimation models if required. And then there's documentation, not just comments or text, but a full visual representation of your applications, including data flow diagrams. All these automatically produced. And business rules. X-Analysis can automatically analyze and extract every rule, creating business rule repository for improved modularization. You can also create different application areas and subdivide them according to your own criteria. Or to summarize, X-Analysis will allow you to find a better way to understand the impact of code changes and learn more on what's beneath the surface of your code, their relationships. A better way to speed up developments with customer feedback, to Fresh explaining that they've seen productivity gains and improvements of up to 50%, while onboarding time for new developers is significantly reduced too. And by knowing complexity of programs, you can more accurately estimate scope and risk. Also, understand what objects are affected by a change and what the entry and exit points are of an application. You can use these to better perform better testing too, which in turn reduces the ongoing application maintenance costs. And as everything is understood, documentation and packaged accordingly, therefore, we're reducing risk too. Okay, so Stephen, I've built this up somewhat, but
No, that's fine.
as the old adage goes, the proof is in the pudding. And as such, I'll now pass over to you to complete today's X-Analysis demonstration. Steve, you may take control of the session.
Thank you. All right, very good.
I can see the screen.
Can you see my green screen?
I can see the green screen too. You're
Fantastic.
ready to go.
Okay, great. Well, thank you everybody for joining the webinar today. Again, my name is Stephen Flaherty. I've been with Fresche Solutions for 14 years. However, I come to the organization with 30 plus years as an RPG developer. So I can understand the challenges that you face every day with impact analysis and fixing bugs and testing and climbing through the green screen code. So yes, X-Analysis is deemed a developer tool. However, it's not just that. It can be used by your quality assurance uh, consultants, your business analysts, your tech writers, even your new programmers that you're onboarding because of the flow charts and all of the other non-technical features that are within the product, which I'll showcase in a moment. But first, let me explain to you how X-Analysis works. So what you have on your system, it's a two-step installation process. There's a library named XAProd that gets loaded onto your IBM-i. That is where our software resides. That would be our menus, our files, and our commands. And then you access the main menu here. So let me explain to you how X-Analysis works. You're going to see the term cross-reference library, and you'll see the term repository used interchangeably within our software package. The first thing I'm going to ask of you is to provide me a list of all of the libraries where your objects reside, your programs, your queries, your files, your data areas. Then give me a list of all of the libraries where the source code resides for those objects. I'm going to feed that information into a batch job. Xanalysis is going to read every single line of source code in your system and build out a brand new library. We call it a repository. It's a read-only process. We'll never update anything in production. This is not a copy of your production library. This is a brand new library that gets created. It's a heavily indexed, where used library known as a repository. This is where all of that where used information Xanalysis is going to gather up, and all of the metrics and so forth. It's a one-time repository build. Once it's built, as you make coding changes throughout the week, for instance, we give you a refresh batch job whereby Xanalysis is smart enough to go through your system and pick up just the changes that you made for that week and apply them to the repository accordingly. Now, the next step is to install the client. It's basically broken down into two windows. Here's your navigation pane, and here's your perspective window. So we ship with the product the Eclipse Runtime client with unlimited licenses. We do not charge by the license. It's unlimited seats. So, and again, it's a read-only client, so your users can't break anything. So basically what it is this is the IP address of where the XAProd library lives, and these are all the repositories that I have built. And you can see that the repository, again, is dictated by the library list. So in my demo today, my object library and my source library just happen to be the same names library, but in your world, you may have many object libraries listed on the left and maybe a few source libraries listed on the right. Let's take a couple of requests from the navigation tree. If I double click on all objects, you can see that I get a user interface that enables me to filter, but I'm just going to select all objects. And you can see that I have 498 objects. I'm presented with a tab and a window in my perspective window here. If I double click on programs, I'm presented with a second tab, a second window. I double click on files and so forth. So for each request that I make from the navigation tree, I'm presented with another tab, another window, and what I can do is I can export these windows to PDF, Word, or Excel. So if you're working on a team effort, or you have a Word document, a technical design document, a conceptual design document that you're trying to build, gone are the days of copy and paste. You can now export these windows. Now let's talk about the data model diagram. What does that mean? A data model is just that. It's a picture of all of your physical files that reside in the repository and the relationships that they have to one another. Every chart and graph that I'm going to show you today comes with its own color-coded key legend that's indigenous to that chart or graph. So in the case of the data model, when I'm building out those relationships, I'm not just doing a display file description, a display object description, a display file field description, a display program reference. Xanalysis is reading every line of code for every RPG program, and I'm picking up those relationships, all those reads, all those chains, all those lookups, all those set lower limit read equals. Now, if I want to become laser focused on this file today, I can double click on the picture, and I'm presented with yet another tab, another window that's going to give me just those files that I'm interested in that have relation to the cuts. Let me see that. I want to close that, clean up that. All right. So now I have 8 files that I have interest in. So with every list that I presented to you today, I can right mouse click on any object name and get what we call the context menu. This enables our go anywhere from anywhere technology within the software. So I tell my customers, when in doubt, just right mouse click on the object name or the variable name or the field name and you can get there from here. So some of the things that I can do when I right mouse click on this object name is I can look at the source code for this physical file. I can right mouse click and I can look at the file field details for this physical file. Now that we have a better understanding of how the navigation tree behaves with the perspective window, let's talk about one of the many reasons you would buy X-Analysis and use this in your organization. It's for impact analysis. So say, for instance, I have a project where I have to increase the customer group field from 2 positions to 4. Well, I have to now research my system to find out what impact is it going to be making such a change to my system. So I can do file fields where used all references. What this is going to give me is another tab, another window, but it's going to list every single source member where this field is being used. Here's the statement, here's the line of code. However, we all know as programmers that the story does not end there. What if I move that field to a save field, a work field, a parameter field, a screen field? Well, we have a feature called leveling, and I'm going to tell X-Analysis to show me the next level of moves for this field. So you can see that the number of lines of code has increased from 63 to 115. And here's my level here. So I'm using it in an SW field. And I can keep drilling down to level 3. If I want to know all the parameters that I'm using this field in, and if I move that to a work field and use it in another parameter call, that's cascading parameters. However, I'm going to go to maximum tracking because I don't care where this is being used. Show me every line of code. And we support free RPG, embedded SQL, and oh, by the way, don't forget your queries. If you create an IBM-i query, that's the last thing that you remember to go and check. You move this into production, and when this query runs, it's going to bomb because you forgot to go in there, because you got to go in there manually, right, and change your queries. Let's go back over to the programs, and I'm going to bring up the RPG source member and show you a couple of the features that are enabled while you have the RPG source displayed. One of them is to give you the indented source code listings. What does that mean? That's the beginning and ending of each if and do loop. Another thing I'm going to provide you with every RPG program is the pseudocode. The pseudocode is the English version of the program logic that's going on in this RPG program. So again, you have a business analyst, a QA analyst, a technical writer, you're onboarding a new consultant or employee, or you are going to rewrite this program in Java or .NET. You can now give the pseudocode to that individual, and they can really hit the ground running day one based on this pseudocode and some of the flow charts I'm about to show you in a moment. Additionally, if there's a screen or a display file associated with this RPG program, I can show you the display file for each record format. And oh, by the way, I give you the display file attributes. And keep in mind that you can export this information to PDF, Word, or Excel. So again, if you're creating a design document, you can just export this information. Again, gone are the days of copy and paste. So let's talk about documentation for a moment. Let's talk about some of the flow charts that get shipped with the product. Today, I will review the data flow diagram, the hierarchy chart, and the structure chart diagram. Let's start with the data flow diagram. The data flow diagram is highlighted here is my RPG program in red. And what X-Analysis is telling me is that I have 8 programs that are called from this program, 8 calling programs. I have 6 files used as input, 1 file used as input output, and 1 file used as update output. Now, if I were to expand the caret for this file, I'm also going to show you just the fields that are being used in this program from this file. What does that mean to you as an RPG programmer? That means you no longer have to recompile this RPG program in library Q temp so that you can scroll to the bottom of the hard-coded listing to get that information. We have all of this information in the repository. If I want to change my focus to the physical file, I'm just going to double click on the picture. And now my focus is highlighted in red. And what I have here is I have 5 logical views. There are 26 programs that use this file as input. One program uses it as input and output. 1 is output, 10 is update, and 14 is update. And look at that. I have my queries down here. Now, let's consume this page for a moment. And I know that all of you probably have had to draw this flowchart manually, climbing through the code, recompiling programs, going into Visio or ABC Flowcharter and drawing this box and drawing this arrow. And again, if you add a box to this tomorrow, you make a programming change tomorrow, are you going to remember to go into Visio and to your file server and update that document? Probably not. I would guess not. Okay, let's go into the next diagram, the hierarchy chart. Same information, however, it's really an old school diagram, but it's still 1, 2, 3, 4 levels of calls here. And oh, by the way, I have a color-coded key legend that tells me, what does pink mean? Oh, that's an update program. Green's display. Light blue is a print program. Lime green is input. Now I'm going to right mouse click on the picture of the RPG program and go into the next chart, which I feel is one of the best that we provide. Why? Because this gives you the entire invocation stack from the time I call this maintenance program all the way to the end. So I don't have to climb through the code looking for calls and submit jobs. So I'm not doing anything manual. And I'm going to show you the files at every call level. Another thing I'm going to give you with the structure chart diagram is this. Watch when I hover over the RPG program with my mouse. What comes up is called the narrative box. This is the actual logic written out in English sentences of what's going on in that program. So this, coupled with the pseudocode, the data flow diagram, the hierarchy chart, you can certainly get that new employee up and running very quickly with this tool. And you can certainly find bugs much more quickly, and your BAs, your QAs, your technical writers, and the list goes on and on. Now, in the beginning of the demo, I told you how you could export each one of these tabs individually to PDF, Word, or Excel, and I can create a beautiful design document. However, I'm going to use a different feature called Documenter. I'm going to highlight that and go to Mark for Documenter. And I'm going to take the file I've been working with today, mark that for documentation. And I am going to let X Analysis generate this document for me today. So I'm going to generate a single document in Word. I'm going to name it this, give it this as a description, and this is going to be the UNC path to where I'm going to put that document. This user interface you're looking at represents all of the tabs I just opened up for you today. So instead of exporting each one individually, I am just going to check the boxes that I want. All the features. I want the objects list, the yellow data model diagram, my logical views, my file fields where used, objects where used, data flow diagram, structure chart, and my screen prints. This represents the table of contents in the order in which it will be presented in the Word document. Now, I'm going to create an 8.5 by 11 document. Overwrite it if the file already exists, click on finish, and this is what I get. So this document represents the demo that I just did for you today. This was generated from X Analysis. I did not key this in. Here's my table of contents. Here are the color-coded key legends. And here is the name of the document. If I can, oh, there we go. And now I have my selected options. And I have my 2 objects that I'm documenting today. And here's my yellow data model diagram for the physical file and the logical views over that file. And here are the file field details for the physical, the field name, the long name, the attributes, the buffer length. And finally, here I have the objects we're used for the physical. These are all of my display files, my RPG programs, my logical views, my queries, and I have some RPG and COBOL as well, programs here at the end. We do support COBOL. And finally, so here is my data flow diagram for the RPG. Here's the data flow diagram for the physical file. Again, look at all of the boxes I didn't have to draw using Visio. So much time is saved. Structure chart diagram. There was an option to bring in the narrative box as well. And at the end here, I'm going to have 3 record formats in my screens. 1, 2, the field names, screen names here. And finally 3. So what I've done for you is I've created a 35-page technical design document in 30 seconds. Okay, let's close that. All right, I'm going to jump back over to the navigation tree and showcase a few more features for you, one of which is called application areas. So everything in my repository today has everything to do with my system. So I have purchasing, order entry, accounting, EDI, shipping, receiving, and so forth. But Mary supports the accounting module. So I can create an area. It's an application area within the repository. It's not another library on your system. It's an area that I can create and put all of the objects or flag all of the objects. I'm not moving the objects into an application area. So Mary now has her own sandbox. She has her own area where she can do her testing and make her changes, and no one's going to bother Mary. But now one day I say to Mary, we're going to replace this homegrown accounting package with JD Edwards. So please go out and research all of the areas that accounting touches in the main repository. Does it all the bridges, all the interfaces? So instead of Mary panicking, I'm going to give her this button. This button represents all of the areas that accounting touches. It has nothing to do with accounting, but sometimes it might chain out to the transaction type. It might chain out to the CUS file. I might do a set low and limit read equal on the context file. I don't care. All I know is that when I replace the yellow boxes with JD Edwards, Mary has to go out to all the blue boxes and probably have to make a modification to Edwards to support that. Now, another reason you would use an application area would be the case where I was making that change to the customer group field. So what I would do is I would gather up all of those objects related to the customer group field in the CUS file, put them into an application area so that I can be ensured that I am making those coding changes to every object and every line of code that needs to be made, and I can become laser focused on my testing. You can have as many application areas as you like. And again, it's not another library. It's just a flag that we set in the repository where we assign that object to that application area so you can better do data flows, business rules, and so forth. Let's climb back up the tree and stop at business rules so I can show you what that is. Business rules. So what I'm going to do is I'm reading every line of source code in your system. I'm going to rip out the business rules for every RPG source member. Business rules would be anything that's hard-coded, a product not equal to 0, any calculation where I'm doing a chain or a read. So again, and I can export these. So an example would be, all right, I'm going to rewrite this RPG program and I'm going to make it a procedure or a module. Okay, well, your syntax to your program may be changing, but the business isn't changing. You still have to incorporate these rules into that logic. I don't care if you're rewriting it in Java, .NET, Another instance would be if I made this coding change in 7 other RPG programs, and I'm going to change that to 500,000 because I hard coded that value. You need to know that. You need to know those other programs where you made that same coding change. That goes along with consolidated rules. So business rules is at the member level. Consolidated rules, which is really nice, is at the file level. So for the contract header file, here's every field in this file where I have a business rules. Now look, for instance, where I have hard-coded the debtor field, and it's not even in the same source member, not even the same RPG program. So now I have all of my business rules for this field right here. And if you expand to the caret, by the way, I will show you the code. You can double click and go right into the program from here, by the way. One final thing, let's talk about metrics. That's auditing. I'm auditing your system. I'm reading every program. I'm gathering up valuable information. Under complexities, what am I gathering? I'm going to either dump these programs into interactive bucket or a batch bucket. The information that I'm gathering, source type, source file, library, the number of source lines for each source member, the number of cyclomatical complex, that's the if and do loops, maintenance indexes, number of files, device files, display files, called programs and calling programs. That's metrics. Finally, problem analysis. I'm gathering up information about your programs, and I'm going to tell you that you have 29 objects with no source. You have source with no objects. Some program alerts. You have 30 programs that have more than 48 lines of code for an if statement. This is my favorite. You have 131 source members where the receiver is too small to hold the result. So factor 1 divided by factor 2 is a results field that's too small to hold that value. If you're going to go from DDS to DDL, here's some considerations to look at before you embark on that project. You have 12 programs that have unused subroutines, and you have 72 unused logical views. You might want to clean that up because you could be taking a wicked performance hit when those jobs run and they're executing updates over those 10 million records in those files. So that really does conclude my demo. And I'm going to pass it back over to Andy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm going to make myself a presenter again and share my screen. Okie dokie. So thank you again for your time and demonstration there. Let's summarize what we saw during the demonstration. And first, I want to make sure that you're aware that development was online, meaning that all information is up to the minute. Everything you need to make changes with confidence is there with you. Stephen also demonstrated the data modeling. Now, developers are always going to want to know how information across tables are related. X-analysis provides an automated path to see what fields are related to what fields in the different tables at a click of a button. Graphically, we've drilled down potential too. Also demonstrated was the ease in which we could collaborate with colleagues through real-time annotation and multiple export options. Discovery was a key part of the demonstration, and we saw its use in many areas, but it's the addition of levels and variables that provides the elements of focus, detail, and tracking that developers need. Another area in which was highlighted was in the creation of application areas, and to ensure continuity, the addition of relationships to elements for particular areas. Finally, a really nice feature is, of course, impact analysis. And we saw how we can understand any ramifications that a change or update would have on the application in question before a change is made. It's really powerful stuff. Now, everything you saw today is possible within X-Analysis Advisor, and it's quite a rich feature list, including application areas to subdivide applications, customized documentation with exports, and metrics to measure code quality and complexities. However, we understand that there are smaller teams and businesses that may not require this extended functionality. And that's why Fresh also provide X-Analysis View with just the essential features required for the leaner IBM-i business. With X-Analysis View, we provide the automated visualization and graphical interactive documentation capabilities, the relational data modeling with drill down to source code, and the where used functionalities for impact analysis too. So there are two options that are aligned for differing development requirements and budgets. Which version will be the best fit for your enterprise, I wonder? Whichever fits the best for your business, X-Analysis helps provide the confidence and power to maintain and develop your IBM-i applications. It has the technology to automate documentation creation, retain wisdom within the enterprise that may have otherwise have been lost. It greatly increases developer productivity and helps improve code quality too. It supports project estimations, further testing capabilities while lowering development risks. Thank you again for your time and consideration today. Before we close the session, I believe we have a few questions, of which I'm just going to click onto that pane there. Okay, I have one here, Stephen, and I apologize, I'm not going to answer any of these. I'm just going to be the narrator, the guy who reads them out. So the first question here is, does it support SQL RPG LE member types? For example, does it read SQL select statement to find what PFs, LFs are used in the SQL statement and their associated fields?
Yes, we do fully support SQL. In fact, the previous two releases, they did a major enhancement to support that. So, and we actually do read the statements. So SQL is fully supported, yes.
Excellent. And what features are supported regarding data queues?
So data queues, again, it's an object on the system. So if you did where I did that object where used all references, you will see where those data queues are used. Then you could use the data flow diagram to flow out that logic as well.
Okay, terrific. Another one is, how does the tool help find commented out code as an aid to removing it from source members?
So we just this past release made an enhancement to the product where in the metrics, where I have the total lines of source code, they've added another column called actual lines of source. So the total lines of source code are all of the lines of source, including comments and blank lines. Actual lines of source code are only the executable lines of code, omitting the blank lines and the commented lines of code.
Okay. And last, but I think this is a good one. How can I identify obsolete code?
So I do this with customers all the time. When I do a special project for a customer and they want to do what we call a current state of affairs, they want to get their arms around the code, what's active, what's what I call in use, and what's obsolete. So what I would do is create an application area, similar as I did for Mary for the accounting, and I would create an obsolete area code. And in that, there's application area rules where I have the capability to use the last used and modified dates of an object. So what I would do is I would create an application area rule in and say, give me all the objects where the last used date was greater than 18 months, for instance. So now I've kind of moved those objects out of the way. So they're kind of out of focus. And now I've isolated those objects as obsolete. That's how I would do it.
Excellent. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you very much for your time as well, Stephen, for today, and your energy in putting together that demonstration for us as well.
Thank you, everyone.
And a final reminder to check out the previous webinars on rapidly developing web applications from your IBM-i using WebSmart, and green screen modernization using Presto. Marketing would have me hung, drawn, and quartered if I didn't mention this, but both videos are available now on our website in the video section, so please do go and check that out. Thank you again for joining us. We would encourage you to get in touch should you have any further questions or require additional information. But for now, on behalf of Stephen and I, we'll wish you a very good day and hope to speak with you again very soon. Thank you for joining us, and goodbye.